Lights, camera, action.
And the winner is...
Welcome back to the Oscar Reel Movie Podcast with Matt and Haley Schmidt. We'll be discussing 21 Bridges and Bridge on the River Kwai today. Before we get into that, what's going on?
Well, been busy doing some Christmas shopping.
Yeah, happy Thursday the 19th, by the way. I think that's when this will be releasing. So just about a week until Christmas. So yeah, trying to get that last minute shopping in.
Yep, exactly. So, got a little time to get that done.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I know I was kind of scrambling, trying to think of some gifts for people.
Yep.
I always forget about it until the very last moment, and then try to use that Amazon Prime to get it here in
yes, exactly.
in 2 days.
Yeah,
so
or
it gets here in time.
the whole ship to store thing. I did a few of those today. Ship to store, so I can pick them up tomorrow, and yeah.
Yeah, I feel like Amazon Prime's made me lazy.
It's true.
Because I'm just in the back of my head, I'm like, I'll get it in 2 days. I'll just wait on that.
Yep.
Maybe not the best way of doing things.
Anything else?
No, nothing else. I got some movie news, but we can get into that later. So
okay, yeah, we've got some good trailers this week for you. After that, we'll get into some movie news. As Matt mentioned, we will be talking about 21 Bridges, and then the Best Picture winner from 1957, going way back, to Bridge on the River Kwai. Unfortunately, we did not do the Ron Swanson where we had steak and scotch as we watched it.
Yeah, it's one of Ron's favorite movies.
It's one of the only movies that he watches. So yeah, Bridge on the River Kwai, and then we're going to play a new game. I'm gonna quiz Matt in an IMDb kind of game. So stick around for that. Test more of your entertainment knowledge, which is always fun. I hope you never give me a quiz because I am not as good at this stuff. Well, I remember different things than you do, I'll say that.
Mm-hmm.
Not that either of us are better or worse, but I just remember different things. So, perfect. All right, should we get into the trailer park?
Yeah.
Yeah. So the first one this week we have In the Heights, which is based on, I had not heard of this before. I feel kind of bad, but I'm sure Lin-Manuel Miranda fans will know that he did this Broadway musical kind of early, mid-2000s, I think. Originally premiered 2005, and I think it hit Broadway in 2008, if I remember seeing that correctly. So yeah, he wrote the musical for In the Heights, and this one, the movie will be directed by John Chu, who people may know from, he did Crazy Rich Asians.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so Lin-Manuel Miranda stars in this. We've also got Jimmy Smits. I didn't see her in the trailer, but I did look at the cast on IMDb. But Stephanie Beatrice is in here, and she plays Rosa on Brooklyn Nine-Nine.
Oh, so, yeah, I didn't see her in the trailer.
So yeah, she wasn't in the trailer, but I saw her on the list, and I want to point her out because I love her. So yeah, like I said, it was not a story that I knew of, but it kind of focuses on this bodega owner in New York City, and kind of talks about his heritage. He's from the Dominican Republic, and kind of the struggles and triumphs in his life.
Yeah, this isn't a story that I'm too familiar with either. I think did this win Tony? I think I saw that it had won Tony for Best Musical back when it came out.
Good question. I did not look into that at all.
Yeah, this says it won the Tony for Best Musical, Best Original Score, and then a Grammy for Best Musical Show Album. So it was a successful musical when it debuted kind of in the mid to late 2000s. Looks like it hit Broadway in 2008.
Yeah, that's what I thought. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so this one, like I said, I feel like people who are familiar with the original musical are probably more familiar with the storyline. I don't feel like the trailer gave away a whole lot of the story, but lots of color, lots of excitement. I mean, it looks like a great, adaptation of a Broadway musical. So this one's coming out June 26th of next year.
Mm-hmm. Are you excited for this in any way? What's your excitement level within the Heights?
I'm kind of mixed on it. Like, I think if someone said, hey, let's go see it, like, I would agree to go to it, but it's not something that's on my must-see list, probably just because I don't know a lot about it. I don't know if that's fair, but that's just kind of how I'm feeling.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm not as into musicals as some other people are, so that kind of lowers my interest level a little bit off the bat. But I'm just trying to think, because, like, Cats is coming out later this year, which is based on a musical. I feel like recently there haven't been a lot of successful musical to movie transitions. I was trying to look through a list to see what examples they are, and in the 60s and 70s there's a lot of good examples with Sound of Music, My Fair Lady, West Side Story, and then Fiddler on the Roof was in the 70s. So there's a lot of good examples back then. But I was just trying to think of recent ones, and I don't know, like watching the trailer, I have no doubt that the music is going to be fantastic, and the dancing is going to be great, but I don't know, I was a little hesitant to say that I'm excited for this, or that I think this is going to be a great movie. Maybe that's fair, maybe that's unfair, but I wasn't super excited when I saw the trailer, so.
Yeah. Okay. Next we have Ghostbusters Afterlife. This is... So at first when I heard about this, I thought this was going to be like a sequel or related to the all-female cast Ghostbusters from a couple years ago. But this is actually a connection to the original Ghostbusters movies, correct?
Yeah, this is supposed to be a sequel to Ghostbusters 2. Yep.
Okay.
Because, the female cast one, which I think it had a subtitle to it other than Ghostbusters. I can't remember what it was, because like this one is Ghostbusters Afterlife. I think the all-female cast had a name like that too, but I can't remember what. That wasn't connected to the original Ghostbusters in any way. They had some of the original cast in it, but they didn't play their original characters. Mm-hmm. But yeah, this one is a direct sequel to Ghostbusters 2.
And were you telling me that one of, like, the original writers, original actors, like, his son wrote and directed this? Is that correct?
Yeah. The original director's name was Ivan Reitman. His son, Jason Reitman, who's been a successful writer-director in his own right. I think he directed Up in the Air, the George Clooney movie with Anna Kendrick a number of years ago, and got nominated for an Oscar for it. So he's a good director, but yeah, he is writing and directing this, so kind of taking over the mantle of his dad.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so we've got Paul Rudd in this. It looks like he's like a school teacher. That's kind of what I gathered from this.
This is going to be centered around kids for the most part. The original cast, like Bill Murray and Dan Aykroyd, Sigourney Weaver, Ernie Hudson, they are supposed to be in this, playing their original characters, but for the most part, the story is centered around kids.
Yeah, so we've got a mother and her 2 kids who move to this small town. They move into this old, like, rundown farmhouse. I think they said the kids are like, oh, yeah, this is my grandparents' house. Like, basically, we're broke, and, this is something that he left us when he passed away. So the son is played by Finn Wolfhard, who people probably recognize from Stranger Things,
He's the hot new kid.
He's in everything. All
like
of a sudden.
Lucas Hedges was in everything for a little while after Manchester by the Sea. So now you got kids with bikes in a weird town. Something strange is going on. Cast Finn Wolfhard.
Yeah, exactly. And then his sister is played by McKenna Grace, who. Maybe the only thing that people might recognize, she was in that Chris Evans movie a couple years ago called Gifted. I never saw that.
I didn't either, but it looked good. I want to see it.
I heard good things about it, but
haven't had time to get to it.
Yeah, that's maybe the only other thing you'd recognize her from. But so what are your thoughts? I know you're a big fan of the original Ghostbusters.
Yeah, I am. Like, as a kid, I loved both of them. The first one's clearly better than the second one, but there's some excitement there. I was never one who where I needed a sequel to Ghostbusters, because I think the biggest thing for me with Ghostbusters, I'd get excited if it was centered around the main cast, but they're not really doing that. They'll be in it, but it looks like they're centering around these kids, where the big draw to the original two movies was Bill Murray and Dan Aykroyd and Harold Ramis, just cracking jokes and being funny. So I'll be interested to see where they go with this one. I like that it's outside of New York. They're kind of, I don't know what state they're in, but they're in the middle of nowhere. So it'll be interesting to see how they make that transition, because I'm guessing that these kids, they mentioned their grandfather in the trailer. I'm assuming their grandfather is Harold Ramis's character, Egon, because he passed away in real life a couple of years ago, so clearly he can't come back. So I'm assuming that that's who their grandfather is, and that's why he stored all the Ghostbuster gear in this old house in the middle of nowhere, and they stumble upon it.
Yeah.
And yeah, so it'll be interesting to see how the original cast ties in, how much screen time they get. But really the biggest draw for me on this is Paul Rudd, just because I really like Paul Rudd. Because without the main cast really even showing up in the trailer, there really isn't much to go off of.
Yeah. I mean, this one's not really very high on my list. I probably disagree with most people, but the original Ghostbusters are not that exciting to me. So to have a sequel to something that is okay, it's not something that I'm clamoring for.
You didn't grow up with it.
Yeah, I know. I only watched Ghostbusters like a few years ago.
I remember I had a toy, because Paul Rudd in the trailer, he picks up the ghost trap.
Yeah.
I had a toy of those at one time where it was connected by a hose to, there was this foot pedal that you'd stomp on, and then it would pop the doors of it open. Mm-hmm. And I loved that thing. We found it at a garage sale. I played with it all the time. And then my stupid brother cut the hose on it. And I tried taping it back together and everything, but it never had a perfect seal, and it never worked again. I was so pissed. But yeah, I'll still want to see this. I'm sure, as more trailers come out, we'll get a better idea on the plot, and maybe we'll get some cameos from the original cast and stir up a little excitement there. But I'll still want to see this. It's just not, this isn't very high on my want to see list, but it's still there just because I grew up watching Ghostbusters and loving it.
Sure. This one is set to come out next July. So put it on your calendar. Or not. Next we have Top Gun Maverick, another sequel.
Yeah, another sequel where the original came out in the 80s.
Yeah. So, of course, Tom Cruise is back as Maverick. Jennifer Connelly is also in this. She was in A Beautiful Mind, which we talked about a few episodes ago.
Won an Oscar for that.
We also have Miles Teller, who I'm a big fan of. He is in Whiplash, which is one of my all-time favorite movies. People might know him from the Divergent series. He was also in a movie with Jonah Hill a couple years ago called War Dogs. That might be one of his more recent things. Yeah,
he hasn't been in much lately. He was in Whiplash, which was so good. Then I felt like he tried doing that boxing movie Bleed for This or whatever that was called, and that one was kind of a flop. And I feel like after that, I haven't really seen him in too much. Yeah, I like him in Whiplash, and he was in Spectacular Now with. Yeah,
that's right.
Yeah, and that movie was pretty good too, but yeah, I just haven't seen him in a while.
Yeah. So, of course, the biggest thing that stuck with me from this trailer is they've got, the Top Gun theme playing through the background, and I guarantee you watch this trailer once, you will have that song stuck in your head the rest of the day, because that's what happened to me. Mm-hmm. But, Yeah, I guess I'm not really sure where they're going with the story. It seems like they've called Maverick back to, like, work with new recruits or something.
Yeah, that's what it seems. And I've seen Top Gun, but it's been
a long time since I've seen that movie.
I'm trying to remember the plot to it. But yeah, this one, it looks like he's a captain now. He was discharged or wasn't active for some reason, and then they call him back in to kind of what you said, to train the new kids. It reminds me, this is a movie that you kind of like. It reminds me of The Guardian a little bit, right? Kevin Costner and the
Ashton Kutcher.
Yeah, and Ashton
Coast Guard
and the
trainers.
the Coast Guard. Kevin Costner is a veteran, comes back to train, students. Ashton Kutcher, so kind of a feel to that. And I looked into it to make sure that this was right. But as soon as I saw Miles Teller with that little mustache, I assumed that he was the son of Goose.
Okay.
Who was Maverick's best friend in the first one and dies at the end of that movie. Which I looked into it. Yes, he is. He plays the son of Goose. So I'm sure there's going to be some tension there. They're going to get in maybe some fights or what have you. But this is a movie that I think they're trying to make a buck on it. I don't really know why they're making a sequel to Top Gun other than just you get Tom Cruise in a movie who's a big draw, and you bring back a title that was really popular in the 80s. You get to hear those theme songs again that were big back then. But I think when this movie comes out, it's going to be kind of in one ear and out the other. Yeah,
I don't feel like it's going to be very plot driven. Like it's going to be all about like the flight scenes,
which look cool. I will say in the trailer, those scenes look really cool. So they have a lot of scenes with them in the planes or the jets. That'll be cool, I think, because they look really practical. They don't look like they're really. There's a lot of special effects there. They look like those actors, especially Tom Cruise, are in those jets and they're filming them kind of straight on, kind of like the old school Star Wars, where it's just their face,
their view in the cockpit.
But that part of it does look really cool. So, if they have a lot of fighter scenes like that, then I'll see it.
Maybe that'll be worth it. Because honestly, I'm not convinced that the rest of it will be that great. So
yeah, we'll see. I mean, if he's just training these students, there's going to be something that happens in the end where they're all going to have to go into an active mission and something's going to happen.
Yeah. So, very similar. This one is coming out next summer as well. Looks like end of June. So we got three summer movies coming out for you.
Yeah.
That wraps up this week's Trailer Park. We've got some movie news. I saw this story one day, and Matt and I shared it with you right away, because this is always a big thing whenever there's trivia, and it's like, hey, what movie won Best Picture this year? Or who won Best Actor this year? And I feel like most of the time, at least when we've gone out for like bar trivia, if they say, what won Best Picture in 1957, we would say Bridge on the River Kwai. Whereas the trivia, people might say, oh, well, actually 1957 was...
Around the World in 80 Days. Yeah. Because it's like the Super Bowl. It's about the year the movie came out versus the year the ceremony happens. Because they always have the Oscar ceremony in like February of the next year. So there's always some gray area there.
Yeah. So, of course, last week when the final Jeopardy question was, the first words spoken in this 1970 Best Picture Oscar winner are 10 Hut, be seated, there was some controversy online because people are like, what? If I Google 1970 Best Picture winner, the answer comes up as Midnight Cowboy, because that's the year the ceremony was. But the correct response was Patton. Patton came out in 1970.
Yeah, that's what I agree with Jeopardy on this one. I always go by, and part of it is because I remember a lot of these because I would just walk through Blockbuster as a kid and look for the little statue on the covers. And most of the time they would have the year next to it as well. And on the cover of Patton, it says Best Picture winner 1970. I always go off of the year the movie came out. Most people, I feel like most people go that way. Again, using the Super Bowl analogy, most people go off of the season.
Yeah,
when the regular season.
72 Dolphins, 85 Bears.
Yeah, that's the season. That's the year the season happened, not the year the Super Bowl took place. So, plus the line was like 10 Hut. I mean, that's. Anyone who knows movies, I guess, it's clearly Patton. That's like an army reference.
Yeah, that's your clue that it's a war movie, not Midnight Cowboy. But it's funny because Jeopardy fans are always so intense about answers. So there was a lot of confusion about this one. But the person who ended up answering correctly, she went to Twitter online, was like, she's like, honestly, I wasn't really sure, but, I guess it's one of those, like, year of the ceremony versus year of the movie. She's like, I'm just happy that I got it right, so.
Yeah, it is, if you're not 100% sure, like, knowing they say 10 Hut, and you can kind of go, okay, that's probably going to come from Patton more so than Midnight Cowboy. I can understand where, like, you might be nervous, because I know when we do trivia and a question like this comes up, I'll go up and ask, do you know which one it is? It's not like on Jeopardy you can buzz in and be like, oh, it's either Midnight Cowboy or Patton, depending on what you mean by ceremony or the like year the movie came out. Yeah. So I can see why you'd be nervous about it, but I agree that people should generally go with the year the movie came out.
Plus,
that's just because that's what I do, and everyone should do what I do.
I'm so surprised people were fact-checking Jeopardy. Like, they are correct 99.9% of the time. Like, people like proving other people wrong. I know.
Especially on Twitter.
Exactly. So yeah, I thought that was a very relevant story to something that, like I said, has come up multiple times. Mm-hmm. So. What else do you have for any movie news this week?
Kind of related. We talked about Silicon Valley ending in our last episode. Kind of related to that, some pictures of Kumail have come out recently because he's on set. I think they're currently filming the new the MCU movie, The Eternals, which he is one of the leading characters in. And do you want to describe what he looks like in these pictures?
He is so ripped. Like, absolutely ripped.
You could kind of tell in the last season of Silicon Valley that he had more,
definitely has some biceps.
Were bigger.
Yep, definitely has some biceps.
These are like shirtless photos that are going around online, and like I feel so much. I feel inferior to him.
0% body fat. Like, we talk about his biceps.
Look like Hugh Jackman and Wolverine with like the veins popping out of his biceps.
Exactly. You can see all the veins popping out of his biceps. Yeah, no, he's looking really good.
Yeah, he usually plays these nerdy characters and things like obviously Silicon Valley, but the one with Ray Romano, where it's about his wife, Big Sick. He plays a comedian, or he plays a comedian
in
the Twilight Zone too.
Yeah.
But he plays these non-athletic roles, and now he makes us all feel bad by releasing these photos like the.
No, he shows you what's possible if you have trainers and dietitians, and he mentioned all of that in his picture. He's like, I've worked really hard the last year, but couldn't have done it with all these people to help and whatever.
Man.
So yeah. Huge transformation.
And there was another MCU actor that released some photos similar to that too. He's going to be Shang-Chi in the movie. What's that actor's name?
I don't remember off the top of my head.
I remember you showed me someone was like, what are we going to do without Chris Hemsworth and Chris Evans in the MCU anymore? And
people are like, yep, here you go. Here's next up.
These two. Mm-hmm. Man.
Exactly.
Also, Watchmen finale was this past Sunday, and I saw an article online that the finale brought in 1.6 million viewers, which was a higher mark than they thought it would be, because this show, I loved it, but it started out slow. It kind of had a word of mouth following to it, but the first two episodes were a little slower, and it didn't get great reviews, but as each episode kept going after that, it just started getting a bigger and bigger following, and I just thought that was kind of cool to see that it had 1.6 million viewers, and Damon Lindelof, who he wrote Lost. That's kind of his other big claim to fame.
Yep.
Which not everyone loved the ending to that show. People were worried about how Watchmen would end. And he, the whole time, had been saying, don't worry, I'm going to answer all the questions. I'm going to answer all the questions. This is a self-contained season. I'm not going to have a cliffhanger. And he delivered on that promise. It was fantastic. All the big questions that had come up throughout the season were answered. It was a self-contained season of a show. It's considered a sequel to the original graphic novel now. And now I'm sure HBO is going to be clamoring for season 2 because it was considered a hit at this point.
And wasn't it kind of billed as like a limited series, like a 1-season thing? But I've heard but HBO keeps saying like, oh, season 1, like they're trying to get like a second season.
Yeah,
out
they
of
kind
it.
of pivoted at one point. I don't know at what point that happened, but I know Damon's initial intention was this is a 1-season, 1-off thing. But now, HBO's calling it season 1. They're clearly going to want a season 2 to just try to go off of the notice that it's getting now, or that the fact that it's gotten good reviews now at this point. But Damon Lindelof, he did a podcast with HBO. It was only 3 episodes long, where each episode they would talk about 3 episodes of the show, because there's only 9 of this first season. And in the last episode, the last podcast, he talks about how he doesn't really want to do a second season. He's open to it if he has a good idea around it, but it took him 2 or 3 years to write this.
Oh boy, okay.
So he's like, at this point, I don't have plans for a season 2. So it'll be interesting to see if they just leave it as a one-off, or if they go with a different writer to try to do a second season, which I hope they don't do. I think it should just be 1 season. Leave it alone. It was fantastic. You don't need to just build off of it. Just leave it as it is. It was great.
Yeah. Anything else?
Last thing, Star Wars comes out this week.
Oh,
Rise of the Skywalker. It'll come out.
I keep forgetting that it's coming out this week.
The day that this podcast releases will be the day that we're gonna go see the movie. How excited are you to see Star Wars: Rise of the Skywalker?
I'm keeping my expectations low, mild, I guess. I mean, I'm not one of those like super diehard Star Wars fans, so for me it's just like, oh, it's another sci-fi movie.
Yeah.
So I'm excited for it, but it's not like for Endgame. Like, I was thinking about that all week, all day long. I was so excited to see Endgame. This is like, I'm mildly excited.
Yeah. I'm very excited. I mean, I grew up on Star Wars. I loved Star Wars. I would, have my parents throw me a green marker as I jumped off the couch pretending to be Luke, R2 shooting him his green lightsaber on Tatooine. So I absolutely love Star Wars. I'm excited to see it, but
Are you apprehensive?
Yeah, like I'm not expecting it to be mind-blowingly good. Mainly because I liked Force Awakens a lot. I didn't mind that they basically redid A New Hope, the original one. Mm-hmm. Because, you're starting...
You're saying, like, it's a similar story.
Yeah, it's very, very similar. That's the biggest criticism of that movie, is that it's almost a remake of it. Which I didn't mind, because when you're doing a new trilogy, kind of do something familiar, maybe introduce some new characters, and then from that point on, then you make it different. Yeah. And Last Jedi came out, and I didn't love it at the time, but I did appreciate that they definitely, changed things up. It wasn't just a straight remake of, say, Empire Strikes Back. They did change things up. They had Kylo kill Snoke, which is different than just Vader marching to the tune of the Emperor in the original trilogy. This is Kylo kind of taking charge and becoming the Supreme Emperor of the First Order. And Rian Johnson, he made all these changes, and he was even asked by
Is he doing this one?
No, he's not.
Oh, okay.
J.J. Abrams is doing this one, who did Force Awakens.
Gotcha, okay.
But originally it was supposed to be Colin Trevorrow, who did Jurassic World. Mm-hmm. He was supposed to do this third one. And he even asked Rian Johnson to include a couple scenes in Last Jedi to set up his story.
Oh, okay.
But then Colin Trevorrow got kicked off, and they brought J.J. Abrams on. And basically, J.J. Abrams has publicly said he's kind of ignoring everything Colin wanted to do, and he's doing his own thing.
Okay.
So I'm not as excited as I wish I was, because it just feels like each movie has been different, like a different director with a different storyline in mind versus someone who just had an overarching story for all three films.
Yeah, and they knew what it would be start to finish across the three.
Yeah, because the thing that bugs me the most is I feel like Last Jedi is just going to end up not mattering at all.
Yeah.
Because it sounds like, J.J. Abrams is going to ignore a lot of things that happened in that, or that Rian Johnson was trying to set up for it. And while I didn't agree with everything Last Jedi did, I still want it to matter in the grand scheme of things. I don't want it to end up being this void of a movie where it's like, oh, watch Force Awakens, you can skip for the most part Last Jedi, and then watch this third one. I want it to matter, and I'm just worried that it's not going to at all. They're even, I just think that the Rise of Skywalker is just going to be almost a straight remake of Return of the Jedi. They're even bringing the Emperor back.
Yeah.
So that's my biggest worry and concern.
Gotcha. Well, yeah, we'll be reviewing it on upcoming podcasts, so we'll give you our thoughts then.
Yep.
So, this week for our current movie, we have 21 Bridges. This came out right around Thanksgiving. We saw it over Thanksgiving weekend. Main character is Chadwick Boseman, who people probably know from his movie as Jackie Robinson, the movie 42. Obviously, he's Black Panther as well. He plays Detective Andre Davis. We also have Sienna Miller, who is a narcotics officer. Her character's name is Frankie Burns. J.K. Simmons is also in this one. Kind of going back to Whiplash. He stars in Whiplash. People probably know him from the Tobey Maguire Spider-Man series as well, right? And he's also in the Farmers Insurance commercials. I feel like that's where I see him most often. Especially, we watched the President's Cup this weekend, so they always have a lot of finance and insurance commercials. So I feel like every commercial break was J.K. Simmons and Farmers Insurance. So thought I'd throw that in there too. And then, so yeah, he plays Captain McKenna. I think I said that. And one of the perpetrators, robbers, I don't know what you want to call him, is played by Taylor Kitsch, which I haven't seen him in anything in a long time, but his most beloved role to me is as Tim Riggins from the TV show Friday Night Lights.
Yeah.
He's done a number of other movies and stuff, but whenever I see Taylor Kitsch, I always think Tim Riggins, Friday Night Lights.
It is one of our favorite shows. He was in Lone Survivor with Mark Wahlberg.
Yes,
that was the
that's
last movie I can probably remember him being in. I'm sure he's been in other things, but that's the last thing I've probably seen.
Mm-hmm. So the movie starts with Chadwick Boseman's character, Detective Davis. He is a young kid, 10, 12 years old probably, and he's at his dad's funeral. His dad was a New York City police officer who had been shot and killed in the line of duty. And then we kind of cut to today where Davis is a detective now, also in the New York Police Department. And we see he's kind of taking care of his mom, who's older now, and he's meeting with internal affairs, because it seems like he kind of has some issues with killing, shooting perpetrators on the job.
Yeah, cop killers, I think, specifically.
Yeah.
Because that's how his dad died.
Yep, so that's kind of his motive and his impetus for everything that kind of happens through this movie. So we kind of get a little backstory on him, and then we cut to Taylor Kitsch. I feel like they don't, the two guys that end up robbing this restaurant, I feel like we don't use see, they don't use their names a lot, but his character's name is Ray. And so it's Ray and this other guy. They show up to this restaurant thinking that there's, I think, is it 30 kilos of
That's
cocaine?
what they think is.
They think it's 30 kilos of cocaine stored in like this restaurant
the
freezer.
Restaurant's like a front for clearly a high up drug dealer.
Yeah, and they get in there and it's not 30, it's 300 kilos of cocaine, and so it's right from there it just kind of turns into this huge, massive thing. And kind of in the process of them trying to steal some of the drugs and get away, 8 cops end up going down.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's when Detective Davis, the narcotics officer, Frankie Burns, the two of them come in, start investigating what's going on. And so from there, we don't want to give away too much in the spoilers, but that's kind of how the movie starts off, and then the rest of it is, these two detectives trying to find the two guys with the drugs and, who shot up all these officers.
Yeah. Andre's big thing is he wants to find out why this happened. He always wants to find out why. Like what the motive was behind it, because not everything's adding up for him when he's looking at the crime scene and
right.
and everything. He's like, something isn't adding up. There's something else going on here. So that's his motivation behind it.
So in terms of score for this movie, I gave this one a 7.8. It was good, but not great. Honestly, I think if someone said, hey, like 21 Bridges, is it a must-see? I'd be like, if you're looking for something to do, go see it, but it's not something that is like super high. Like, yep, this is definitely a must-see.
7.8.
Yeah.
That's higher than I thought it was going to be.
Really?
Yeah. I mean, you gave Joker a 6.7 and Platoon a 6.
Well, I didn't like those movies.
I know.
I liked this one.
All right.
I didn't love it,
Yeah,
but
fair
I
enough.
liked it.
I gave this one a 6.7.
Oh, is this the first time you've given... No, it's not the first time you've given a lower score than me.
Probably not. No, because you gave Farewell, I think, a higher score than I did.
Yeah.
But, yeah.
And probably Shakespeare in Love. But anyway.
I thought this movie was... First of all, it's an hour and a half long, so it's fairly short in terms of movies that are made these days. And I liked it. Basically, my scale is, if it's in the 6s, it's a good movie. In the 7s to 8s, it's a great movie. And then the 9s is like must-see favorite type movie. So it's a good movie, but I think it could have been longer. I feel like things happen too quickly, kind of in an unrealistic way, and it just seemed rushed throughout it. And while I liked some of the twists, I thought most of the movie was pretty predictable. So yeah, I'm with you. Like, it's not a must-see. I'd wait for it on like rental if you want to go to direct TV cinema or YouTube TV or whatever and rent it for a couple bucks, then I would wait for that. So yeah, we can, if there's people out there who want to wait to listen to our spoiler section on this, jump ahead now, because we'll dig into some of the twists and some of the other aspects of this movie that we liked and didn't like, but kind of involve spoilers. So skip ahead now if you feel so inclined to do so.
Yeah.
Okay, so 21 Bridges. What did you think of? What was your favorite twist in it, I guess?
I think, and this kind of plays a big role at the end, but I'm trying to even remember like how these flash drives came up, but basically we find out that there's a bunch of NYPD officers, including some of them that were killed that night, involved in like this money-making drug scheme, which was crazy to me.
Yeah. So yeah, it's a dirty cop.
Yeah.
Uncovering. That's what one of the big twist is that the reason those cops died that night is because they were there to, I don't know if it was pick up the cocaine or at least escort someone who would be picking up the cocaine and give them like safe passage through the city.
Yeah.
So that's one of the big twists. That's why those 8 cops died that night, is because...
Yeah, because like 4... correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it's like 4 of them kind of walk up to the restaurant
and then
looking for it, and then as, you know, they realize, shit, there's someone else here trying to steal this, they get caught in the mix there, and then they call in backup reinforcement, and all of those get gunned down as well.
So yeah, when Ray, who's played by Taylor Kitsch, and Michael, who's the other robber, played by Stephen James, they show up to this restaurant because they've been paid by a rival drug dealer to steal this cocaine. They show up right when the cops show up.
Yeah, like a few minutes before.
Yeah, so then that's why the shootout happens, because they got to shoot their way out of there. I didn't mind that. I liked that, because... honestly,
I think that was like my favorite scene of the movie.
The beginning?
Yeah.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think the movie...
The like showdown at the restaurant in the street, like...
I think this movie starts out pretty strong with that scene, kind of setting up the whole mystery behind this, because it's like, why were these cops there? They were really friendly, just knocking on the door saying, hey, we're here. Yeah. And you don't necessarily know why at this point, so there is some mystery there. And honestly,
because like, and maybe like, you know, I wasn't catching on to everything that, or like common things that go on in drug deals, I don't know. But like when the cops...
You're not involved in a lot of drug deals?
Don't know anything about it. So like when the cops show up and they're kind of knocking on the door, like, oh yeah, hey, so-and-so's cleaning up tonight, so like he'll do us a favor. I was like, and you know, it's like the section that they're at in the restaurant is this huge wine cellar, wine storage, and I'm like, oh, is this guy gonna like give him a bottle of wine? Look, literally, I thought these cops were here to get some bottles of wine.
Ooh, you're way off on that one.
I mean, when the cops showed up, what were you thinking? Like, oh, they're in on something dirty, or like what were you thinking when they showed up?
Yeah, I mean, I was leaning towards the dirty cop thing only because I'd seen the trailer a couple times and there's some mystery behind it. But, like, I didn't know for sure.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I totally thought their presence there was, like, totally innocent.
Good. All right, perfect. That's good, then.
Yeah,
so, yeah, I think the movie started out strong. It was a pretty good shootout. And I thought it ended pretty well, too, with... J.K. Simmons being the main villain behind it all. He was the one in charge of, was he a chief? I can't remember exactly.
He was a captain.
Captain, so the men that he was in charge of were the ones that were all involved in this because, you know, his validation is, they don't get paid enough. By doing this, they get paid more money, they don't have to work as much overtime, so then they less chance of getting shot. So I thought, though the beginning and end were all right, I thought the middle was kind of where it was messy. Because it just, like I said, it's such a short movie that things just happen so quick. Like, they shut down the island. That's where the title comes from. Because the robbers get away.
Yep.
And they realize that they're in Chinatown because someone finds their car there. So they decide to shut down the island, shut down the planes, subways, boats. They just shut down the island.
Yeah.
Which, in the trailers, that's the part that was most intriguing to me.
Yeah.
So I'm like, oh, I haven't seen that in a movie before.
Yeah, it's like, you are literally going to shut down New York. Like, that's crazy.
Or at least Manhattan.
Yeah.
Yeah. But then I felt like they didn't really do anything with it after that.
That's kind of how I felt too. Like, I mean, they relied on it a little bit. Like,
I can't even think of another time where it was brought up.
Just because they're like, okay, well, you know, we saw. I mean, this was one part that was cool. They kept in touch with like this data center that was basic, like surveillance, kind of basically like it was in New York City, like I don't know, surveillance or whatever. They're like, okay, yeah, we've seen, you know, this vehicle, so here's the license plate. And, like, they helped them kind of figure out, like, okay, these are the 2 men who ended up stealing all the cocaine. So, like, they keep going back to this, like, data center, which I thought was really cool. And I feel like at one point, so like based on the information they have, like, okay, this car was found here in this neighborhood, and okay, if they leave on foot, this is maybe as far as they could go. They're not going to go to Queens. They're not like, so I think they kind of like figured out a little bit like, hey, okay, if we close off this part of the island, this might be the only place they can go. But honestly, besides them showing like, you know, helicopter, like they really did not rely on that often.
I wanted to see Ray and Michael try to get off the island. Maybe in each of those different aspects where they try to get off via car or by boat or subway, and then show them trying to do it, and then ultimately they can't. But show that.
Yeah.
Whereas I feel like they just use it as like, okay, they're on the island now and they can't leave, and like that's just the plot device they use to keep them there. So I thought there could have been more there. I didn't love either how the first person they went to interrogate to try to figure out who the robbers were was the owner of the car that they used to do the robbery that they have photos of, and they just showed her a picture and she goes, oh yeah, it's Ray and Michael. I'm like, oh, that's kind of anticlimactic. Like, great investigative skills there. Like, oh, something anyone could. You just get the plates, figure out who owns the car, okay, and then you show her a picture of. You can't even see their faces, and she's still able to identify them.
Yeah,
that's one of those things where if this movie was maybe a little longer, they could have dove into that a little bit more, shown a little more investigative skills.
Yeah, because
behind trying to figure out who they are.
I like when Chadwick's character, Detective Davis, you know, first arrives on the scene and people are like, oh yeah, we've got one person, blah, blah. He's like, no, he's like, if we look at the cluster of like shell casings here and like the angle here,
was cool.
He's like, I'm going to guess it's two people.
That was cool.
And so like you could see that detective reasoning. And you're like, okay, this guy knows his stuff. But then you're right. Then they're like, hey, here's our data center. Here's the license plate. They're like, okay, let's find this lady. And she's like, yeah, these are the two guys.
Yeah.
So yeah, a little anticlimactic.
Yeah, and I did like how, Ray and Michael go to the person that hired them for the job. And they're like, what the fuck? There's 300 kilos in there. You said there'd be 30. And whatever, misinformation. Who cares? So anyways, he pays them. Or they get paid more money than they were originally going to for the job. And then they're like, how do we clean this money? And he gives them the name of basically someone who will launder the money for them and give them clean money. I did like how they went there and then the cops showed up right away. And it's like, how did that happen? Well, it turns out the cops, when they get paid for these cocaine deals, like the dirty money, they use the same person to clean their money. I thought that was cool, like a little coincidence. So I like that aspect of it. One thing, like, you remember at the end of the movie, so this partner he'd been working with the whole time, this woman, what's her name?
Frankie Burns.
He's suspicious of her being involved in this, so he asked to use her phone, and then he looks at her previous calls and sees that she was the one who had called her like acquaintances to get ahead of them and take out some of these. Basically, she was communicating with some of the dirty cops to give them leads, and so that he used her phone and saw that. I think it could have been better if it was like, oh, my phone's dead, can I use your phone? And then you don't show him looking through the phone. You actually, as a viewer, think he is using her phone. And then the big reveal that she's in on it is at the end of the movie when she shows up at J.K. Simmons' house.
Yeah.
So it's just one of those things, when you have all these mysteries and plots, I think it's better to leave little breadcrumbs instead of just flat out showing us things.
Yeah.
So I think it could have done better in that aspect as well. Because I thought it was pretty obvious that she was in on it. Especially after she shot Michael on the subway.
Oh, okay, yeah. Yeah.
It's like, I could have done better at, I think, trying to hide some of the twists. I thought that's where I think it got fairly predictable.
Yeah. I feel like you're good at picking up on that stuff. I'm not always great at like catching some of that stuff. So I didn't necessarily think it was as predictable as maybe you thought. But you're right, like, because Davis and Michael, yeah, like you said, they're talking on the subway, and it's like, okay, he's finally gonna make a breakthrough. He's gonna, like, get the information on all these cops. Like, the last guy's not gonna die. Like, he's fine.
Because, yeah, the big... because the big thing, he has a thumb drive. Michael has a thumb drive he got from the guy who was laundering money with all the names of... we don't know what's on it at this point.
But it turns out to be, like, all the information on the dirty cops.
But, yeah, that's what Andre is trying to get from Michael on the subway. I didn't mean to cut you off, but that's what was going on there.
Yeah, so it looks like, they're finally going to come to, like, a calm agreement. And, this goes back to Davis's character at the beginning, where he's known to just shoot perpetrators, not always with any questions asked. So it's like, okay, maybe he's turning a new leaf, and he's kind of understanding, like, okay, there's something more than just these guys stealing drugs and shooting cops. And then, yeah, she shoots through from, like, the back of the subway car and ends up killing him. Yeah,
and if they would have established that she was she had the possibility of doing that, it wouldn't have come off so much as, okay, well, she's clearly in on it.
Yeah.
If throughout the movie she was kind of trigger happy, or they'd shown her on a previous case where she was a little trigger happy, it might have seemed more natural.
Yeah, but we had no background on her, really.
No, and that's the thing, too.
Other than she's a narcotics officer.
Yeah, and that's the thing, too. We didn't get a lot of background on anyone in this movie, again, because it was only 90 minutes long. I know we get that funeral scene at the beginning with Andre's dad, but, maybe if they would have shown how his dad got killed in the line of duty,
sure,
instead of just opening on his funeral, or if they show Andre in a case before this, and I know they have that internal affairs thing going on, but if they show him actually, like, dealing with a perpetrator before this main plot line, maybe that kind of establishes a little bit more with his character. But yeah, like, it's a good movie, but I just think there are a lot of things that could have been a lot better with it.
Yeah, it had potential, but maybe didn't reach it to the fullest. Yeah. Any other parting thoughts before we get on to our next bridge film?
Yeah, that's right. That's our theme for today's bridges.
We've got two bridges in our titles.
No, I think the biggest thing for me is I wish they would have utilized the whole shutting down Manhattan thing more.
Yeah.
Not to nail it in the ground too much, because I already talked about it, but that was the biggest draw to me for this movie, is that's what was different about it, that they were shutting down the island. So I wish that would have been incorporated in the storyline a little bit more.
Okay. 1957. Bridge on the River Kwai. Shall I drop some facts?
Do it.
So, our major actors here. William Holden plays Shears. You might know William Holden from Network or Stalag 17. You said he won an Oscar for that, right?
Yep, that was his Oscar win.
So, yeah, he starred in Stalag 17, and kind of a fun fact on that, the TV show Hogan's Heroes is based off of that movie.
Yep.
Stalag 17. So, I haven't seen either of those movies. I don't really know much about Hogan's Heroes, but I've heard of it, so there's that. We also have Alec Guinness, who plays Colonel Nicholson. Obviously, people know him from Star Wars. He also appeared in Lawrence of Arabia and Dr. Zhivago.
Yep, who... same director as this movie, as Bridge on the River Kwai, David Lean.
Okay.
For Lawrence of Arabia and Dr. Zhivago.
Also in this kind of ties back to last week's episode, Jack Hawkins is in this one playing Major Warden, and he was in Ben-Hur, which we talked about last week. And finally we have Sesue Hayakawa, who plays Colonel Saito from the Japanese side of the military of the war. This movie was nominated for 8 Academy Awards. It won 7 of them, which, kind of like Ben-Hur, really good stats on that one. Winning 7 of the 8 nominations. The only nomination that they did not win was a supporting actor for Hayakawa. I don't really have much to note, anything special on these awards other than, and maybe you can speak to this a little bit, because I feel like you know a little more history behind this than I do, but the screenplay included Carl Foreman and Michael Wilson, but at the time of the awards, they were blacklisted. So they did not receive any screen credit for writing. It turns out they were posthumously awarded their screenplay Oscar in 1984. But like I said, they were no longer living when they were awarded it.
Yeah, I know that was happening a lot back then. Like, Trumbo was the writer for Roman Holiday, but had someone else put their name on the screenplay because he was blacklisted. And
I don't really understand, like, what was the blacklist?
Yeah, back in the 40s and 50s, being blacklisted was when basically writers or directors or whoever were accused of or sympathizers to the Communist Party. Like, if you were accused of being part of the party, or if you were considered a sympathizer, then you were blacklisted and you weren't allowed to work in Hollywood.
Gotcha.
So there was a lot of that going on back then. If you look at a lot of the Oscar winners from the 50s or 60s, I think you'll find quite a few of them where it's like asterisks. This person was a fake name for this one who was blacklisted, or cases like this where they weren't even credited until years and years later. So.
Yeah. So yeah, that was probably the most noteworthy item of their wins that year.
So yeah, Bridge on the River Kwai came out 1957, directed by David Lean, who, as I mentioned, he would go on to direct Lawrence of Arabia, which we'll touch on at one point, and Dr. Zhivago. This was his first Oscar win, I believe, but it takes place in World War II in Japan, where it opens with Shears' character. He's digging a bunch of graves at camp. He's one of the few remaining POWs for the Americans at this camp, which is run by Saito. And in come a bunch of British soldiers who are marching to the... I can't remember the name of the whistle, but it gets stuck in my head whenever I hear it. That's
kind of like the theme song.
Yeah,
movie, yeah.
Yeah, you'll hear it at the end of the episode. And their commanding officer is Nicholson, who's played by Alec Guinness. And so when they show up into camp, Saito is ordered by his commanding officers to build a bridge over a nearby river so that the Japanese can run supplies and soldiers across it. And he orders everyone in the camp, including the officers within Nicholson's, what's the word? Platoon? Troop? What's the word? Regiment. Within Nicholson's regiment to work. And Nicholson is quick to say, no, according to the Geneva Convention, you cannot order officers to work. And that basically starts off this huge war of who's more stubborn than who between Colonel Nicholson and Saito, because they both just stand their ground. They kind of stick their feet and say no, that they draw a line in the sand and say no, this is how it's supposed to be, which kind of causes a lot of issues because Nicholson is being stubborn like this. Saito kind of treats his men worse than he probably normally would, and he keeps throwing all the officers who are refusing to work because they're all following Nicholson's lead into the box or what have you, like giant metal boxes that are outside, and basically you just isolate them within there. And there's a lot of dehydration and things of that nature that happen while you're in the quote unquote box. And while this is all going on, Shears, who's played by William Holden, he wants to get the hell out of there. He's always trying to escape and find his way out, and he finally succeeds in escaping this camp.
This is like a POW camp.
Yeah.
Right. Okay.
Yeah. That the Japanese are in charge of. So he does. Eventually, he's able to escape. Meanwhile, the workers that are working on the bridge, because it's just the officers that are holding out for the British POWs, they're doing a poor job on purpose. You know, they don't want to actually make this bridge, so they're kind of messing around. And Saito, who is given a deadline for when this bridge needs to be done by, he's in danger of missing that deadline, which would result in him, due to tradition, I can't remember what it's called, but he would end up kind of having to fall on the sword. You know, so he eventually caves in to Colonel Nicholson and says the officers don't have to work. So then there's this huge celebration, and the British feel like they've kind of won their own little mini war in some way, because they defied their captors and they caved, so they kind of have this moral victory. And there's actually this scene where they show Saito after he announces that the officers don't have to work and the British soldiers are celebrating, and he kind of goes into his office and starts crying. So it's kind of this sad scene where, you know, it's these two men who are just stubborn and don't want to move or change their opinion, and one of them finally caves, and he feels like they're both big on honor. That's their big thing. And he feels like he lost honor to a certain extent because he had to cave to his enemy. But he had to do it because he needs to meet this deadline to building a bridge. So Nicholson gets on site, realizes that his workers are doing a poor job. So he actually starts getting them in shape and starts getting them to do a good job, which some of the workers start scratching their head on it a little bit, but they're like, he knows what he's doing, we'll follow orders. It even gets to a point where he asks someone who, one of his officers or workers who knows a lot about building bridges, and says, are we building this in a good spot? And he actually says, well, if I'm being honest, no. We're basically building this on mud, and it's just going to keep sinking, and then eventually collapse. He's like, where would you build it? And he says, oh, I'd build it upstream a little bit. It's more sturdy, and it wouldn't collapse. So they actually start having meetings. Nicholson starts having meetings with Saito and giving him advice and telling him, this is what we need to do, X, Y, Z, and here's why.
So you can kind of see them working together.
I wouldn't even say that. I think it gets to a point where Nicholson's almost in charge. He's basically telling Saito what to do and what needs to happen. And whenever Nicholson says we need something, Saito basically replies and says it's already done, or it's already been ordered. So it's almost like Nicholson's in charge and he's given the orders at this point. But again, Saito is just stuck because he needs this bridge built. So he's just stuck having to say yes to everything. So they start building the bridge in this new location. Meanwhile, we go back to Shears, who is in a hospital, healing up from escaping and being rescued. And he gets initially asked if he'd be willing to lead a crew of a few men back to the bridge so that they could blow it up. And Shears is initially, no, I don't want to do that. I'm not going back there. And they, because these are British officers that he's talking to, it's like a British are in charge of the hospital that he's at. So they aren't American soldiers. They aren't his direct superiors. And so Shears is like, no, you're not in charge of me. I don't have to do it. And they're like, oh, no, we talked to your commanding officer and you've been transferred to us. He's like, oh. Well, see, funny thing is, my name's not even Shears. It turns out he's this private who just took the dog tags of a Shears so that he could be an officer and not have to work. But as you know, in Saito's camp, he makes officers work. So he's like, it didn't really do me any good. They're like, oh, no, we know that you're not really Shears. So, yeah, you're going to help us out. Otherwise, you're going to get dishonorably discharged. And he's like, well, when you put it that way, I'd be happy to volunteer for this thing. Like, William Holden brings a nice comedic level to this movie. So he agrees to it. It's him, Jack Hawkins' character, who is Major Warden, and they bring like 1 or 2 other guys with them. So they parachute in, and then they start walking to where the bridge is, and William Holden is kind of leading them there. And then going back to Nicholson, they're pretty much done making this bridge, and his whole thing, he's gotten to the point where he's trying to make the best bridge ever. Because his attitude is, we want this bridge to keep being used and last past the war so that people can see how good British officers can be. Which is like its own weird, insane way of looking at it, because in the long run, I kind of get what you're saying, but in the short run, you're helping the enemy.
Yeah.
So he's kind of driven insane to a point where he becomes obsessed with finishing this bridge and doing a good job on it. He even gets to a point where this whole thing started with him not wanting the officers to work, but they fall so far behind. Nicholson even says, oh no, I'm ordering my officers to work anyways. So it's like... You know, you just fought to have them not work, but now you're so obsessed with finishing this bridge, you're having them work anyways. But they finish the bridge, and Saito tells them that there's going to be a train that, like, comes over the bridge, kind of at this, right after they finish making it, as, like, a ceremonial, we finished. And Holden and Shears and Warden find out that a train is going to be passing by, and they want to blow the bridge up right when that train goes by so they can kind of kill 2 birds with 1 stone. So they get to the bridge, they wire it, like in the middle of the night, they set up explosives on it, they wire it, they hide it, the wire's in the water so you can't really see it. And then the next morning when Nicholson and Saito and all the men are at the bridge waiting for the train to come by and celebrate, we realized that the river had gone down overnight, so the water level is really low. So you can actually see the wires of all the explosives. So Shears and Warden start freaking out, and Nicholson is kind of walking up and down the bridge, kind of reminiscing and saying like, oh, this is something good that the British soldiers have done. And he notices the wires. So in a crazy way, he notices them, brings Saito down to the river, points out the wires, and they start following the wire to one of the men that Shears and Warden brought with them, who has like the trigger basically to explode it. And it's just this insane thing where Nicholson is basically helping the enemy. He's gotten to a point where he fights off the British soldier and kills him because he's threatening to blow up this bridge that he made. And then they can hear the train getting closer and closer, and Shears comes running after Nicholson, telling him to blow the bridge. And Nicholson recognizes Shears because, you know, they'd met earlier in the movie, and says, you. And then Shears gets shot and killed right then and there. And then Nicholson finally realizes, like, what have I done? And he goes to blow up the bridge. He himself gets shot at some point and then kind of falls right on it and blows up the bridge and the train that's passing by. And that's basically how the movie ends. So it's another World War II movie, but you know, it's a little different in the sense of it shows the POWs and having to work and build a bridge, and it's on the Japanese side of things, which I feel like most World War II movies are on the German front side of things. But it kind of shows, I like Nicholson's character because he becomes so obsessed with this idea of doing something so perfect that he doesn't realize that it's not really helping, that he doesn't realize that he's helping the enemy and he is not helping, you know, their side of the war out. So it's really interesting.
Yeah, in terms of score, what did you give this one out of 10?
I gave it an 8.6.
Nice.
I think just the nature of it being in the 50s, parts of it that probably are a little slower or drag on. For whatever reason, I always feel like you have to pay attention to the dialogue more in those movies from the 50s and 60s.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you on that.
So I think there are parts of it that get a little slower, especially when Shears and Warden, they parachute in to the area of where the bridge is, and then they have to hike the rest of the way. There's some long shots there of them just walking and walking and walking that could probably have been cut. But overall, I think it's really good. I like the relationship between Saito and Nicholson because they're both so stubborn. They have to, they don't want to move an inch on their beliefs, but one of them eventually does have to cave. So I think that's an interesting relationship. I really like William Holden in this movie too, because as I mentioned, he brings a little bit of a comedic relief to it.
He plays Shears, right?
Yep, he's Shears. So he's the one who makes the most jokes in the movie, at least in what is a pretty serious World War II movie.
Yeah, for me, I gave this one a 7. It's just, it wasn't my thing. I think the ending where they have the whole, like, the water line goes down, so you can see the wires for all the explosives. Like, that was real. Like, I felt like that was at a better pace, and there was a lot of intrigue there. But for me, the rest of the movie just didn't really keep my attention.
Yeah. No, that's fair. Ron Swanson would be very disappointed in
I know. But that's okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, so honestly, I don't have many other thoughts on this. So if you want to kind of talk about some of the other award winners from 57.
Yeah, sure. So I haven't seen a ton of these movies. There is one that I've seen that we can touch on because there might have been some debate on which... In reality, Bridge on the River Kwai was going to win Best Picture, but there's another famous movie here that we can talk about a little bit. So, Best Supporting Actress and Best Supporting Actor went to the same movie, Sayonara. Best Supporting Actress was Miyushi Umeki. Best Supporting Actor, Red Buttons.
Red Buttons?
That's what it says.
That is not a real name.
It's probably a nickname, but that's what it says.
Oh my god.
But as we mentioned earlier, Cecil was nominated for Best Supporting Actor. Arthur Kennedy was nominated that year for Peyton Place. He would eventually win a couple of years later for Cool Hand Luke, which I love.
I was gonna say I didn't recognize the name at all, but he's in Cool Hand Luke, so okay.
This is the year that Joanne Woodward won her Best Actress award for The Three Faces of Eve. And Best Actor, as we mentioned earlier, went to Alec Guinness for Bridge on the River Kwai. I'm not sure how many nominations he's had in his career, but I know he got nominated for Star Wars as well.
Yeah. No, actually, I'm glad you brought that up because I did not spell out specifically that he won Best Actor for this.
Oh, okay. Yeah, he won, which I think deserving. I mean, I haven't seen really any of these other movies. Marlon Brando nominated for Sayonara. Anthony Francesa for A Hateful of Rain. Anthony Quinn was nominated for Wild is the Wind. Anthony Quinn's a pretty named guy. He would eventually win an Oscar at some point too. But I think he was great in this. He's not exactly the... I think William Holden is kind of billed as the lead in this, but they're both leading in this movie. And I think Alec Guinness definitely has the more interesting character, where he's the one kind of driven insane-ish with that idea of building that perfect bridge. So
yeah, exactly.
Rightfully so in that win. And then David Lean won for Best Directing for Bridge on the River Kwai. And then Best Picture, obviously, also Bridge on the River Kwai. But also nominated that year, Peyton Place, which I haven't seen. Sayonara, which I haven't seen. Witness for the Prosecution, which is being remade, actually. And I think Ben Affleck is going to be in it.
I would say it sounds familiar, but maybe it's just because I've heard that... like some of the news about the remake? I don't know. Or maybe that's just kind of a standard, like, legal phrase, too, so maybe that's all I'm thinking of, but...
It looks like he's going to be... Ben Affleck is going to be directing this remake as well for Witness for the Prosecution, so...
So, like, starring in it as well? Or just directing?
This has him starring and directing in it, so kind of...
Do you know what it's about?
I've never seen these movies, but it's a courtroom drama. This says veteran British lawyer must defend his client in a murder trial that has surprise after surprise. So I like courtroom
nice
dramas.
And vague.
Yeah, I know. I like courtroom dramas, so maybe I'll have to check that one out sometime.
Okay.
But then the other Best Picture nominee that I wanted to bring up was 12 Angry Men.
Oh.
With Henry Fonda.
Yes.
So that's the one where I would say it's more rewatchable these days than Bridge on the River Kwai. I know you think it can get slow at some points, but 12 Angry Men, I think you could rewatch it now and it would be just as intriguing as back in 1957.
I mean, the fact that I watched that movie in civics class in 8th grade and I enjoyed it then, I would think that, yeah, it would still be enjoyable watching it now.
I don't know what score I would give it, but I might give 12 Angry Men a higher score than I would for Bridge on the River Kwai.
Yeah, because 12 Angry Men, for people who don't know, it's about like a jury trial, and so it's like the 12 people of the jury, and it's basically like one person is kind of the dissenter. And
yeah, they all think he's guilty except Henry Fonda, and then the rest of the movie is him convincing the rest of the jurors that this person might not be guilty. So I do think that's really interesting, especially because they try to act out some of the evidence that they're given.
Yeah,
so.
I'd say that's one thing that I remember pretty vividly from that movie.
Plus the person who originally voiced Piglet is one of the jurors.
What?
So yeah, you can't miss that voice.
We drop nothing but facts. Fun facts here.
Yep.
Well, we're going to try a new game here. I heard about this loosely on another show that I listened to, so I thought, oh, this might be fun to play. So, for those who don't know, IMDb is the Internet Movie Database, and basically it has everything you need to know on any movie, TV show. And when you go to each actor, actress's page, it typically has 4 of their projects that it says like known for. So typically those are like, you know, the biggest things that they're known for. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to give Matt a few actor names, like people who've come up on the show today, and see if Matt can come up with 3 of the 4 most known for credits. Which may be difficult based on, you know, it's like if someone has like a huge filmography, who knows which 4 might make the list. So we're going to quiz Matt and see how he does. Okay, so the first one we have, we mentioned him from the Top Gun Maverick trailer. Tom Cruise. Can you name 3 of the 4 roles that Tom Cruise has listed on his known for?
How many guesses do I get?
5.
Okay. Mission Impossible Fallout?
No.
Damn. Jerry Maguire?
Yes.
The first Mission Impossible?
Sorry, that's incorrect. You have 2 more guesses. You have to get both of them right.
Are any of the Mission Impossibles on there?
Yes.
Oh. And it's not the last one or the first one?
It's not the first one or the most recent one.
Rogue Nation?
No.
What the hell? Ghost Protocol?
No.
What the fuck? They have the 2 worst ones on there? Or one of the 2 worst ones on there?
You're out of guesses, so I'll just tell you.
Well, I know. Magnolia?
No.
Okay. Alright. What are they?
Top Gun.
Yeah, I thought about saying that.
The Last Samurai.
That's a good one.
You guessed Jerry Maguire. And then Mission Impossible 2. MI2.
That's the worst.
That's the one they
That's the worst one.
So that's what's always fascinating about this, like, known for section.
I don't know what the algorithm is for that.
I have no idea. No idea. So sometimes it makes sense, sometimes it doesn't. So
yeah, I should have just said Top Gun, but I was stuck on Mission Impossible.
Well, and I was a little worried when I said, like, oh, we talked about him in the Top Gun Maverick trailer. I'm like, oh, shoot, I hope I don't give that away. But anyway. Next is Jennifer Connelly.
Beautiful Mind.
Yes.
What's her Oscar win? Blood Diamond?
No. Ooh, no. She is good in that.
Hulk?
Nope.
Can't even think of other things that she's in.
I mean, I'll say, like, I haven't... The other 3 movies that are on here, I have not seen them.
Okay, so then it's not that one where she's married to Bradley Cooper and he cheats on her with Scarlett Johansson.
I can't even think of
With
what
Justin
that one is.
Long, that ensemble one, like, the dating one.
The Valentine's Day one?
And it's not Valentine's Day, it's, like...
Oh, he's just not that into
Yeah,
you.
he's just not that into you, that one. Yeah.
Those both came out at very similar times, so I get them confused. They're older.
Requiem for a Dream.
Yes.
I forgot she was in that for a second.
Did I give 2 more guesses? Or just one more guess?
I think one more.
Yep, one more guess.
Is it older than or newer than Requiem for a Dream?
One of them is older, one of them is newer.
And I only have to get one of the 2.
Yes.
Perfect. 50-50 split on that question.
So that opens it up to literally everything she's done. Yeah. I mean, she's the top billing on one of these. Like, she's the front of the movie cover.
Mm-hmm.
So, it's a big role, I guess.
She's not in A League of Their Own, is she?
That's not one of the known
okay.
for. I'll check and see if she's in that, though.
What were they?
House of Sand and Fog.
I've never seen it.
From 2003.
Yeah, I think
And then,
Ben Kingsley might be in
Yep, exactly. Yeah. And then The Rocketeer.
Shit!
1991.
Fuck! Damn it!
Did you know that?
Yes! I fucking loved The Rocketeer as a kid. And I forgot she was in that. That one pisses me off.
Yeah.
I watched The Rocketeer so much as a kid. Timothy Dalton's the bad guy in that. They play Sinclair. Oh.
Yeah. Sorry.
Shit. Well, I'm disappointed in myself on that one.
Okay. Let's do one more. My Friend and Yours, Taylor Kitsch.
And shows will be on this, so Friday Night Lights.
No!
Oh, it's
no!
not.
He's not even listed as Friday Night Lights on here.
Oh, Lone Survivor?
This is what's stupid about the known for piece. No, Lone Survivor's not on here either. The 2 things that we've said he's in is not on here.
What's that which movie that he's... The Covenant. Covenant?
Yes.
That terrible ass movie that he's in.
Yep.
I can't even...
It was a huge flop in the box office.
Oh, John Carter.
Yep, John Carter.
I didn't think that movie was that bad. They pumped so much money. That movie cost so much to make.
That's what made it flop.
They weren't going to make it back. That movie is not that bad, though. Okay, yeah, John Carter. That's right. I forgot about that. So I just need one more.
See if you can figure out, one of the last 2.
Is it a movie or TV show?
Both of them are movies.
Okay.
I'm seriously, I can't believe that they don't have Friday Night Lights. He's credited for every episode.
I don't think he was in every episode, though. But they credited him for it, I guess.
Yeah, I think so anyway.
Yeah, maybe. I was thinking when he was in jail, but
yeah.
I don't know. Man, I can't think of other movies that he's in other than Lone Survivor.
One of them is based on a board game.
Oh, fuck. Battleship. With Rihanna, I think, was in that.
Oh, gosh. I don't know. I'd have to look.
That's right. Oh, man, I blanked on that.
Yeah, and then the other one, X-Men Origins Wolverine.
Holy God, I'm not good at this. These are movies that I've seen.
It's tough. I mean, they're, like we said,
I should remember that he's in those.
Yeah, but, it might
Gambit. He played Gambit.
Necessarily be top of mind, so.
Plus, I just try to forget about X-Men Wolverines. They're bad movies. These are bad movies, unfortunately.
Yeah, so that's what we have for the IMDb game. Let us know what you think of it. See if we should try that one again. Or if you like some of the other games that we do. As I've said before, we are on Twitter and Instagram at Oscar Reel Pod. We're always sharing trailers, our scores. We post when new episodes are out. So feel free to comment, share our stories. Be sure to give us a review, rate us on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. Stick around next week. We've got Marriage Story and American Beauty.
American Beauty, yep, that's right.
I keep wanting to say Beautiful Mind. American Beauty and Marriage Story next week. Go see a movie.